Hey, what is up, guys? Evan Aldo here, in Central Florida right now. Really nice up here. I haven't been up here in a few years. More of the seasonal change a little bit than down south in Miami, because you're 3 hours driving north. And I was thinking about it. It's October. We're getting close to November. We're getting to that part of the year. It's kind of like holiday season that lasts until January. And it's kind of that time of the year, especially when you're young. I was thinking about, how when you're a kid, just so much of your life is dictated by kind of your parents, the decisions they made for you, where you went to school. That was probably your parents. Maybe you had some say where you went to high school or college, maybe. But I think even that's like a lot of people's parents. Even, what I realized is so much, so many people, their lives are kind of completely dictated by their parents until their parents pass away, it seems, in a lot of ways. And it's good and bad. I think it's good if you're somebody who really wants to be like your parents, but it's going to be hard to, get better than your parents, to achieve more than your parents if, everything's kind of dictated like that. And first 7 years of life is huge. I was reading the Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. First 7 years of life is huge in terms of programming, all that type of stuff. Poor family, life's a struggle, all this, work very hard, go through a lot of drama, a lot of misery, and maybe you'll be okay. At age 65, you'll have, $1 million, enough to make ends meet, hopefully. We always view it that way, but maybe it could change. Or, grow up in a rich family, abundance, you could do what you want, all those type of things. It's all about the programming. And that's why that could kind of supersede IQ level a lot of times. And I remember, when you're a kid, you don't really want to go to school. You kind of dread going to school. And I'm thinking about it a lot, the stuff we went over, the stuff we learned. Was it that useful? And was it even going to stick in somebody's mind for that long, especially in elementary and middle school and high school, that type of stuff? You're going because it's the law, because you have to, because the state determines, what you need to learn. And I remember I was listening to Naval Ravikant talk about this, and he was saying, even people who are completely uneducated, never even went to school, they're only a few years kind of behind in terms of knowledge what people who went through all that, have. And it's kind of a system, it's kind of like that matrix, kind of that system where it's like, you got to do this. I remember a lot of, teachers used to, one teacher, especially in high school, used to say, if you even want to think about making a lot of money, you need to go to college and all of that. That's been proven over and over again. That's false. I remember, just think about it this way. There's 13, I know there's definitely 16-year-old kids that became, millionaires or multimillionaires flying around in private jets. I think as young as 13 or 14-year-old kids, became millionaires. And I guess you could argue, they had some crazy talent. I don't know. I think it was just the things they were focused on, the things they were thinking about. I think it's more, they felt that way, law of attraction, energy of the universe, those type of things that kind of gave them that. They kind of gave them that motivation there. I think that's a possibility too. And some may say, there's two ways to view it. Some may say, nah, that's never going to happen to me. I don't have that knowledge. Or somebody may say, well, if a 13-year-old kid could do it, I'm 25 or I'm 30. I should easily be able to do it with all my experience. It's the way you perceive things, and it's the way, kind of you're raised into that, the way things are shown to you. A lot of people, want to take that victim route, don't think you could break out of kind of that matrix. And you look at, one of the things I remember when I first graduated college, I was always interested in talking to people who were doctors, lawyers, things of society that was viewed very highly. And I kind of realized they were still in the matrix. They were still kind of, had to show up at a certain place at a certain time. I know doctors in residency, they have to work 20-hour shifts. After all those years of med schools, it's probably way better in other countries. In America, it's probably the worst type of system. But from what it seems like in our life expectancy is just going down. Everything seems to be just falling apart here, but in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's another discussion for another day probably. But they have to go through that residency, stay up for 20 hours straight. Yeah, that's totally makes perfect sense. Yeah, you're not a cog in the system if you're doing that. You're not a pawn if you're doing that. You're totally, yeah. There are better ways, folks. There are better ways to change people's lives. There are better ways to help people than going through all that. And it doesn't have to be that bad. It could be, we could have a society where people do what they want. And I think you could break out of it, pretty easily. I think one of the things you really need, I was listening to Robert Greene talk about this on a podcast, you need a sense of urgency. You may think you're 25. This is exactly what he said. You may think you're 25. You think you're young. You got your whole life ahead of you. No, you need it goes by quickly. Every year you live goes by quicker than the last. You need a sense of urgency. You need to do things now. Do not waste time. I spent a lot of time, listening to podcasts, listening to as many audiobooks as possible, learning as much as possible. That's really important. You got to do those things now. It may not be, and I think it's like, it doesn't have to be something you dread. It was not as bad as, learning a lot of monotonous nonsense in school, and then kind of, the regular 9-to-5 matrix, all of that is kind of doing the same thing essentially. Just doing it's all monotonous. It's not really creative. It's all monotonous. They don't want you to break out of that. They just tell you got to go through this, do what you don't like. You can never have what you want, all of this negativity type of stuff. And then what do they do when they see somebody who broke out of it? What do they do? Oh, that person was lucky. Oh, that person is this. Oh, that, it's almost like it doesn't exist. It's like it's not possible for me. And it's kind of all your belief system, really, at the end of the day. It's kind of just breaking out of it. It's all your belief system. Like the Dr. Bruce Lipton in his book, The Biology of Belief, says, wrote about how there's many, and there's other books I read about this, like there's not tons, but there's quite a few stories of people who were terminally ill, who had cancer, who were supposed to die within months or weeks or whatever, and miraculously recovered. And I didn't think that was possible. You know what I mean? I didn't think, because doctors are very deterministic. Our society is very deterministic. Doctors always love to say, you're going to die if you don't. It's a good sales pitch. It's an amazing sales pitch. You're going to die if you don't spend money on this. You're going to die if you don't do, what I mean? It's amazing. And look, none of this is medical advice. I could be completely wrong on this. It's just based on what I read. It's kind of pseudoscience here, but you're going to die if you don't do this. Most likely, probably, yeah. It's a game of probability. It's like making a trade. It's like that, Most likely you would, but there's people, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't know it was possible for someone to have terminal cancer and just miraculously recover out of nowhere. It's unexplainable. They don't really know how that happened, and it is true. It is. I'm not. Some people may say, "Oh, it's just false stories. It's all nonsense." No, that is. There are quite a few stories like that. There's another book called Cure. I forget who it's by, that talks about these stories, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting to read about, because look, it seems like the rates, it seems like a lot of people, especially in America, are just dropping dead of heart attacks in their 60s. A lot of people have cancer, and it seems like that's a lot of the kind of baby boomer generation is seeing that. And then you see the generation that was older above them, they seem to be kind of living longer. It's interesting. I don't know exactly why or how this happens. It could, at the end of the day, a lot of it is up here, mental. It's kind of how you're raised, what you believe. And I feel like the more technology now, we're always bombarded by all these different things. You got to calm down. You got to get into that creativity that's kind of blocked out from you in a lot of ways. I know people say, there's a few people say, I've listened to Jake Ducey a lot on YouTube. His channel's been getting bigger. Some good insight. He's really, structures his videos pretty well, a lot of them. And, he was saying, like, one of the things, it's all environmental factors. Even the tap water could kind of, there's views of, like, remnants of birth control being in tap water. Just because it's safe to drink, maybe you shouldn't drink it. That's there's a lot of environmental factors, the way our diet, the way we eat, seed oils, those type of things. There's a lot of those type of factors, and it's kind of, we're declining. We have all this technology, but it's kind of used just in a money making type of way. It's used in that matrix where do everything right, and then what do you get? Maybe you'll make your $200,000 a year or whatever, but you got to show up at the certain place at the certain time. You got to do your kind of sales pitch, and you got to do what I was listening to somebody on Joe Rogan was talking about surgeons. They always want to operate because that's all they know. That's all they were taught. That's the way it went. And I think kind of in the medical field, kind of in that, there's a lot of creativity that's not there. It's just a lot of people, they're afraid to kind of branch out of it and go their own ways. And it's a lot of self-esteem. People, as Dan Pena said, a lot of people have low self-esteem a lot of times, very low self-esteem. People are always kind of trying to listen to somebody else instead of using their own best judgment sometimes, so they don't have that accountability. But you need that accountability to accomplish anything in life. When you're right, you take that accountability. You look like a genius. When you're wrong, you take that accountability. It's risk. That's what it is. And I think, that sense of urgency is very important, to have that sense of urgency, because things go by quick. You got to start now. Another technique, you got to constantly be thinking. It's law of attraction. Constantly be thinking about the thing you want and know what you want. Write it down. Carry up. One of the techniques that Bob Proctor, he died recently, but he's a good law of attraction teacher. He showed Jake Ducey, write down the thing you want. I'm so happy and grateful now that I make, whatever it is, $50,000 a month. $50,000 a month. He said do it like 10 times what you make right now. So try to change your yearly income into your monthly income. So say you make, $5,000 a year, or $5,000 a month, $50,000 a month, something like that, $60,000 a month. So happy and grateful, and carry that card around with you to remind you. It's all about, reaffirming that. There's studies that showed people that, I never even knew this, the mind-body connection is very powerful. Studies that showed that people who simply kind of visualized their muscles getting better, or visualized working out, or I don't know exactly, visualized working out. Joe Dispenza's talked about this. Visualized working out and didn't work out at all. Their muscle mass grew by 15%. I think that's pretty significant. 15%. I mean, think about it. I'm just thinking like 10 to 15. If you were able, say your maximum bench press, was 200 pounds, 10% coming up from that, that's another 20 pounds. I don't know if it would coincide with that, but that's significant. Going from 200 pound bench press to 225 almost, 50 or even 215, that's significant. It's a lot of the mind muscle connection. I remember one of my friends would always say stuff like that when we were younger, when we were at the gym working out. He's like, it's all mental, man, it's all mental. And I would always be like, this kid's just gonna get me injured or whatever, trying to do too much weight or all, you know what I mean? But he was right. I think he knew a lot there. I think he was onto something. A lot of it is your paradigm. That's what Bob Proctor says, your paradigm, the way, you kind of think about things. If you have a paradigm to always be rich, to always make money, you will keep that. One may say that, this person who's rich, they're smart or whatever, they're able to do all that. No, a lot of times it's just their paradigm. It's just the energy, the way they kind of communicate with the universe. And that's the main thing that, I want you to realize. Things could change a lot quicker than you think. A lot quicker. I think you can make serious improvements, serious things done in about 3 months. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think 3 months is a good thing. People will tell you, it's going to take to start that business 10 years. You have to work 90 hours a week, 10 years, and that's nonsense. And the reason why is because you can't even work. Naval Ravikant has talked about this. You can't even work 16 hours a day. Maybe you can make someone do monotonous nonsense, But creative work, no, your brain breaks down. That's not really possible. It's more about quality over quantity, kind of. You don't need to put that much effort in, especially if it's something that you're passionate about, especially if it's something that you've read about a lot. You can have a big advantage. It could be like 3 hours of work to you could be like, the average person doing 12 hours of work on it because they're not as passionate about it. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. So you don't need, that amount of time. It doesn't have to be, in this day and age, you don't have to have a miserable existence for 40 years. You really don't. I really don't think you do. You can have, a pretty happiness and joy. I mean, a lot of people, it's all about, they'll tell you about, you got to sacrifice and all this and hate. No, that's not how it is. And then maybe 40 years later, you'll be happy. No, if you sacrifice for 40 years, you're just going to have post-traumatic stress at that point when you're in your 60s, when you finally have the money or whatever. No, that's not going to work. That's nonsense. That's stupidity, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. By that, it's not going to work. You need to be in the present moment. Take time to meditate. Take time to do these kind of creative things. Nature walks. It's a different vibration. Bob Proctor talks about this, law of vibration. I got to read more about it. I was reading a lot about it a year ago. I wish, that's one thing with the mind too, There's only so much you could really know. Things go away. Like even learning a new language, something like that. You don't use it for 6 months or a year, you're not going to be fluent anymore. It's going to go away. You got to constantly practice things, constantly, do things. You could build a good foundation for things that could probably last a lifetime, say like riding a bike, things like that. You may need to tune it up, if you're rusty at it. Maybe even, I think ice skating is probably a good example of that too. Skiing as well, things of that nature, probably even surfing. You could kind of tune it up, but you're still going to be rusty at it, so things go away. You got to keep, you got to kind of keep at it too. And you got to, like the sense of urgency too, just to realize, time is more linear, what people talk about too. That's another big thing. Time is more linear. It's kind of not really existing. Like everything is in a straight line. It doesn't go like that. So you could get things quicker, kind of. It's hard to explain. That's how I got to read up more on that. But you could kind of get things quicker that way. I mean, there's people who turned their lives around in months and went from, having no money at all to having a really good income. I'm not saying you're going to become, a multimillionaire in 3 months. That's kind of unlikely. But you could go from making $5,000 a month to making maybe $15,000 a month in three months if you really write that down, really focus on it. What does that feel like? Get that creative vision towards it and believe it's possible. And really you want to, a lot of people, like I was saying, their lives are so dictated by your parents. A lot of people live, especially in America, it's not like it used to be. A lot of people live with their parents until, I think the average guy, probably my age, who's 25, still lives at home with their parents. I don't think I would be nearly as successful if I spent all this time living at home, around my parents. I don't think the view would have ever been to do what I've done. You know what I mean? It would have never been supportive on this. I didn't even really tell nobody. I didn't tell anybody really when I was going into crypto, when I was going into trading, when I was going into all this stuff. I didn't really tell anybody why? Because I knew they weren't going to be too positive about it. That's why I realized that I needed to kind of do it on my own. I don't think you should, because it's a negative energy too. Do what you want to do. Tell others kind of what they want to hear for the most part. And you don't have to lie. Just say, they'll say, oh, I thought you were going into, I don't know, I thought you were going into trying to be a manager at the local McDonald's. And you could say, oh, well, I changed my mind. I thought I wanted to do that. I just changed my mind. Say something. I got that from Gary V. I'm not I don't know too much about Gary V. Only seen some clips, but that was kind of a cool thing. One of the good things he said. I'm sure he knows what he's talking about. I would have to watch him more, but anyway, I mean, that's kind of what he was saying. Do that. I told people and just tell people you're doing your main thing. Maybe you have a normal job. Maybe you quit it or whatever. Maybe you got fed up. Maybe you just couldn't see yourself doing it anymore and you just quit. A better thing to do rather than just tell people you're, trying to start a YouTube channel or something else of that nature, a business. Say, I'm doing the business on the side. I'm just doing part-time my job. That would be a good idea. Something like that. Something more believable. You want to keep, you don't want any negative energy because everybody's going to tell you all the negative possibilities. But like I was saying with those people who miraculously recovered from cancer. Now, this isn't medical advice. I'm not advocating anybody do anything. This is just, things I've read, things I've studied. Don't want to, do your own research, obviously. I may have no clue what I'm talking about here, but, at these points, you don't have, too much to lose. You might as well try positive thinking. You might as well try that mind-muscle connection. I think that's one of the things that really could change everything. That mind connection there. Now, the thing too I've been thinking about, I have scoliosis. I have a winged scapula that's been very hard to kind of fix. And, there's different views in law of attraction. Some people think, it's all an illusion. It's all, you could dictate all of reality, that type of stuff. There's other people who don't exactly fully think that. They just think, the mind connection in the body could change things a lot, with your energy. Who knows really exactly how it is, how much of this is really dictated by your mind or whatnot. I don't think we'll ever really know that, at least not in this period of time. But having said that, I think there's a lot you can do. And I think ultimately so-called experts a lot of time are just people who are stuck in that place and don't have the creativity to, really change things, because a lot of times they're not even happy with where they are. why would you never should take advice from somebody you don't want to be like. And ultimately, you want to be like somebody who's happy with where they are, somebody who's in the present moment, somebody who's happy right now, not somebody who, I wouldn't take advice, even if somebody, worked a job they hated for 40 years, then retired and had a decent life after. I still probably wouldn't take their advice, because I think it's a lot better, or it's definitely possible for practically anyone to do a lot better than that. You know what I mean? To have that present moment right now. And I realize, a lot of the reasons of depression, of all these things, a ton of people are on pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceutical, that's the main thing too. Like, it's a genius system too, like the way it works, because, they kind of just want you to be unhealthy. So you're hooked on these, what is it, cholesterol medication, all this type of stuff. And I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but, they can make studies say anything. I heard some big proponents of like statin drugs saying it like prevents cancer. Everything goes back to cancer. Yeah, okay. Maybe. Everything kind of goes back to, it's interesting. But anyway, it is, you kind of look at different things, and there's a lot that really isn't known. It seems like we know a lot. We send astronauts to the moon, unless you don't think that happened, but we send rockets, without astronauts all the way to Mars, take pictures. I believe they come back, or is it just remote? I don't even know how that works, but no, I think the signals, no, they would have a signal. That's crazy that they're able to have kind of signal that far away to kind of Mars. I think there is, I don't know. I'm probably going to look stupid if I don't know enough about it, but that's the thing too. Like I was saying, it's hard to really, you learn this stuff and then you forget it a couple months later. You got to really be focused on it. That's why, I used to always be like, let's learn as much as possible. Sometimes you really got to kind of focus on one general thing. And it could be one general thing, say like YouTube, but there's different things you do. Maybe I do the vlogs, technical analysis, that type of stuff. There's a lot of different avenues to look at. And I think another thing too that's really helped me, that's really motivated me when I do it, Wim Hof method breathing really can clear your mind, really could activate a lot of creativity there. It's a form of meditation. Meditation, very good. Somebody like Ray Dalio credits a lot. Like if you're looking at the most successful hedge fund guy, I believe, ever, he credits a lot of that to meditation, 20 minutes twice a day. Schwarzenegger as well. Arnold Schwarzenegger talks about how not to waste time, kind of that sense of urgency. He said when he was young, he used to work out at 2 hours a day or something, and then he did a normal job, took acting classes, all of this in one day, and learned English. He did all this type of stuff. And I don't think that, it was all stuff he wanted to do. It wasn't like working some job he hated. It was all, he wanted to do acting. He wanted to go to the gym. He wanted to do, I think he had a sales job as well. I guess he was maybe that was the thing he didn't like the most, but he only did it a certain amount of time. He wanted to do all these things, and he only had to do it for a little bit. Maybe, and he got big pretty quickly. Maybe like the 3 months I was talking about, he was able to probably get pretty big in 3 months. A lot of people, that amount of time, like it did not take me very long to build a following on YouTube. CryptoFace, if you guys have been around from the early days, CryptoFace is the big, probably half of my subscribers is still from that. That was a big thing. But I think at that point, like I was in such a place mentally where I was just connected. I was just like connected with everything, that positivity. I think that's what drew that energy. That's what drew that. It's not that often that some big YouTuber like that, hey guys, got caught off there. Wanted to kind of conclude this by saying the importance of using kind of your imagination. Use your imagination. When you're a kid, obviously, you go outside, you use your imagination. There was one study where, I forget the exact, it was a law of attraction type thing where people would pretend it was years ago where they were younger and they were able to do things, like playing touch football that they didn't do in many years. And they were able to do it with kind of without pain, aches and pains and things that, would have plagued you in your older years. It was kind of like being young again, things like that. It's mind-body connection there. That's really important. I think kind of when you're stuck in the matrix, you don't use your imagination as much. That's kind of, they don't want you to be like that. When you're a kid, use your imagination. What they tell you when you become an adult, when you get a little bit older, no, you can't use your imagination. No, it's not like that. You got to do your tax. You got to do all this stuff. And you look at these people, they're just so miserable. They get irritated too, because they see somebody who is able to figure it out when they can't. That's, it belittles them almost. They're very sensitive about that. I remember I had a teacher in high school who was just so, always about, you had to follow the rules. You always had to stay until the amount of time. And everybody who didn't, he was better than everybody. He knew it. That narcissistic. A lot of people who are narcissistic too, you would think they have high esteem. I think they really don't. They're very insecure. They're just pawns kind of, and they do exactly what the narrative wants them to do. And they're such pawns, and in that way, it's a more of another topic. But that narcissism you see a lot, and you see a lot of that kind of in American culture to a certain extent. You see a lot of that kind of, that's another topic. But I remember that there's just that one teacher in particular, no, it's got to be done this way. I know anybody who claims, that any narcissistic tendency, because nobody knows everything. Most people have no clue what they're doing. You know what I mean? Nobody really knows at the end of the day. There are so many things that are unknown, and anybody acting deterministic like that, like I was saying about doctors, or kind of that sales pitch, no, you're going to die. No. That's not how it works. Nobody is that determined. That's like somebody telling you 100%, Bitcoin is going to this price next week. Maybe you could have an 80%, 90% confidence of that. But no, even if you got it right, no, there's no way you knew 100%. It's a game of probability. There's nothing to completely know 100%. It's not, it's not that black and white. We're not at that point yet. That's what you got to realize. Anyone who's too deterministic like that, run away. Do not, you got to listen to people who think more in terms of probability. That's where you're looking at. And any narcissistic tendency, that's toxic. That's going to be very, very negative towards you. You got to look other places. Use your own imagination, own positivity. I want to leave you guys at that. Hope you got something out of this video. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye.